Hey, this is Paul Evans from TLifeMinistries.com. I'm here with Wes Gunn. He is our missions minister here at Landmark Church. And today he's going to be talking about a critical issue that is often overlooked when it comes to short-term mission trips, and that is insurance and safety.
Yeah, most people don't want to think about the negatives that can happen on a mission trip. But unfortunately, there are things that happen. There are medical issues that come up with your own team members. There are accidents that happen. I was just in Tanzania a few weeks ago. We saw a lady get, hit front on by an oncoming vehicle. I've been traveling in a vehicle in a South African country that actually a little girl ran out in front of us and struck and killed the girl. Those kinds of disasters. I've had missionaries on site that have had a stroke. All of those things we don't want to think about, but the reality is when those events happen, you want to be prepared. You as the team leader need to have thought through these different scenarios. And the first is carrying good insurance, probably that you're going to want to do. And the multiple areas to think about, first of all, are not just medical liability, which is an important thing. For each team member, you need to know if that person has a medical emergency and they need to be medically evacuated, does their existing insurance cover that? And purchasing a separate team policy that also covers that medical evacuation. Those can be very affordable for $2, $3 a day, depending on the size of your team and the company. So that's an important first step, making sure, are we covered medically for each and every team member?
Right.
Another area on insurance that's not often thought about is the liability that happens in the vehicle that you're riding in, as well as your church organization. And lawsuits happen just like they do here in America and other countries. If the vehicle your team is riding in hits somebody, the car, we assume that person's insurance, whoever's driving or owns the vehicle, is going to cover, but what lawsuit may happen as a result that puts your church or organization at a liability? And thinking through those things, there's some great policies out there. There's specifically for missions that provide. Our church, we usually carry up to $1 million of liability insurance on the vehicles that we're traveling in, as well as on our medical missions. If something were to go wrong, heaven forbid, but that at least provides some liability there.
Yeah, I see that overlooked all the time. And personally, if it wasn't for folks like you, I wouldn't think about it. If I was putting together my first mission trip, I would just be making it so simple that safety I would think about, like, don't go on the streets at night. And that would be about the limit of it for me. So being able to hear about that, and even the evacuation stuff that we tend to overlook, but you've been in so many critical situations that's made an impact. When it comes to safety, what are some of the things that you try to train teams on to be cognizant of and to think about before they go on a mission trip?
Yeah, some of these things seem very simple, but for people who've never been outside the United States, they need to be reinforced. And that is, first of all, we don't go out by ourselves. That someone always has a partner, preferably multiple people. Traveling in groups is even better. But we don't ever go out by ourselves, even in broad daylight. You don't know. It's an unfamiliar place. You could get disoriented. You could get lost. Someone could come along and take advantage of you. Don't go out by yourself. And then secondly, people need to know where you're at all times. Even if it's a shopping, we're out in the tourist market area. Where are you? Does your team leader know where you're at? Are you carrying a mobile phone number of your team leader in case you're separated or there's an accident or something happens to your team leader? Do you have other people in the country you can call in the middle of an emergency? So we give all of our team members an emergency document that they keep on their person. Every time we leave, where we're staying, they know how to contact somebody in the event of an emergency to let them know where they're at. And that brings up another point of insurance is, in these situations, and we've heard stories of kidnapping, ransom, those kinds of things that happen in the more risky countries that we travel to. What is your organization going to do in the event that someone is kidnapped and held for ransom? What's your policy? Are you going to pay ransom? Are you going to negotiate? And thinking through those scenarios, after the fact, it's really too late because the clock is ticking. And so there are some good companies out there that offer kidnapping and terrorism insurance. And we can go overboard with insurance. I understand those things. But at least having thought through an emergency contingency plan that someone in the United States is aware of that you can call in the middle of that There's also some great safety training for mission teams specifically that's out there. You can get on the internet and do a search, DVDs, things that you can show your teams that I would definitely recommend for even more closed countries, Middle East, places that are a lot more violent that you're taking a team into. You're going to want them to be prepared and think through those issues. It seems like sometimes we're scaring them, but sometimes Americans, we need to feel a little bit more afraid than we otherwise would.
I remember when we were in India, and they were putting the speakers out so that the word could be proclaimed. And I was like, well, this seems like a little bit dangerous because we're in a dangerous area. And I think Wasaji said, yes, it is a very good day to die for the Lord. Well, I'd not, received the word that it was a good day to die. Right. And so you've got to think, too, that sometimes the locals, when they're living for the Lord, they're not like us Americans who think that as long as it's safe to share the word, we'll do it. They're giving their heart, their soul, everything, to the Lord. And so even knowing just how risky it is faith-wise when you go, not just the crime and the violence on the street, but even when it comes to areas of faith, be very aware of what you'll be up against.
Yeah, and you don't want to seem in taking precautions and the insurance and being prepared doesn't mean that I don't have faith.
Right.
And that's one of the points here is that it is being prepared for things that we cannot expect sometimes. But trusting in God's provision, trusting that God takes care of us. He does that moment by moment, but there's also many times where missionaries doing great work, sometimes bad things happen, and being prepared for that.
So true. Well, Wes, thanks for being with us today. Guys, go to teenlifeministries.com. If you're a member of the Zone, we got plenty of resources in there to help you as well with your short-term missions, some forums, medical release forums, and other things that will be super helpful to your ministry. As always, teenlifeministries.com, taking the guesswork out of you for work. Be blessed.